Hi friends, I'm Jeffy G. You know, Arturia has really locked up the virtual synth world in my mind. There's really two products that I think solidify their position as the market leader. One is Pigments 6, which just came out. Now Pigments has been out for a while, but 6 adds some amazing new features, and it definitely qualifies as the super synth. The other product is the V Collection X, which is by far the best collection of classic and vintage synths available. And fortunately, a couple times a year, Arturia has a 50% sale on both of these products. I've been a Logic guy for more than 25 years, and one of the first things that attracted me to Logic was the built-in virtual instrument. In particular, things like the Hammond B3, which has a great Leslie rotation effect. Another is Sculpture, their physical modeling synth. And yet another is their brass instruments, which have articulations. And this was the first time I realized you could use articulations in MIDI in a DAW. So for years, I was really happy with just the Logic delivered instruments. But then, like everybody, you venture out and look at the other bundles. I bought a bundle from Korg just so I could get the M1. I bought a bundle from Native Instruments, and now I'm on Complete 15. And along the way, there's lots of good vendors, like Yuhi. And even though I knew Arturia was out there, it wasn't until I bought the V Collection that I realized just how good these emulations of vintage and classic synths really are. With the V Collection X, you get 39 instruments and 3 expansion packs. But of those 39, actually 5 of them are brand new instruments. They're not classic or vintage keyboards, and they are the augmented series. There's woodwinds, grand piano, brass, studio, and voices, and they sound great. But just diving into some of the digital synthesizers, let's take a look at the DX7, the clone of the Yamaha DX7. It looks just like a DX7, sounds like a DX7. It has hundreds of presets that are going to sound familiar to you, from bass, brass, drums, everything that made the DX7 quite famous. And the best thing about this is you can choose those presets or you can program it yourself. All of the knobs that you see before you work. If you recall, it was very difficult to program a DX7. The algorithms, well, they've made that job a lot easier here by displaying the algorithms in this middle spot. With all of the Arturia virtual instruments, there's usually an advanced button that gives you a programming environment that's far easier to make changes. In this case, you've got all your operators on the left here, all 6, and all the parameters for controlling those operators, whether it's envelopes, modulation, or effects, all built in, easy to see, much easier to program and make changes than it is in a real Yamaha DX7. A similar synthesizer from that period that I really like is the Emulator 2. Lots of presets, again, long list, and you can go through those presets, but you can also modify those presets, which I find great. All of the controls on the emulator are familiar, but what it didn't have, which is great, is you can click on the computer screen to zoom in and edit the sounds. You've got an edit page where you can pull in samples. You've got an assign page and an effects page. So imagine what you can do with this. It really is a multi-sampler. You can take all of your modern samples, come in here and create new sounds that were never played on an emulator before. Then there are synths from Roland and Yamaha and Sequential that everybody needs in their collection. Here's the CS80 from Yamaha, and you can see it's pretty complex. Lots of switches and knobs and dials, and that's what a CS80 looked like. Like all the virtual synths, you can click on Advanced for doing your programming. Gives you much easier access to the different functions, modulation controls, and of course effects. There isn't a better CS80 out there in my opinion. And to buy a CS80, the physical hardware, where it costs so much, it's out of reach for most composers. Another keyboard that's well used and very popular is the Roland Jupiter 8. Both the Jupiter 4 and the Jupiter 8 share some capabilities. Here's the Arturia version of it. That's using a preset that Duran Duran took great advantage of, and the great thing about that preset is it uses the random arpeggiator, which has a unique pattern, difficult to recreate in other synths. The arpeggiator and all of its controls work just like the physical synth. A long list of presets. I like some of the simple virtual instruments that are included. The clone of the Casio. Very simple Casio keyboard, but it has some great sounds. If you're into programming, click on Advanced. Here's all the envelopes, modulation, effects, just like we've seen in the other ones. Recently, I was working on a song where I wanted to take advantage of the Roland 303, which became famous for this acid sound. And sure enough, the Arturia collection has Acid V, their clone of the exact same machine. So the point of this collection is, it isn't every digital or analog synth over the last 30 years, it's just the best and most common. So this is all you really need. In the case of Roland, there's a few in there. One includes the Juno 6, sounds like this. I find everything I need just in the presets. And if I want to program the synth, I can do that, which is wonderful. But for the most part, presets are really, really good. You get over 9,000 presets included. Now, there's lots of ways to collect individual VSTs that emulate Roland, Yamaha, Sequential, Oberheim, all the classic synths. But by far the most effective way is the V Collection from Arturia. So a big factor here is value for money. Since there are 39 instruments in that collection, when you break it down on an instrument by instrument basis, it's fairly inexpensive. And there's always been the argument to collect and purchase the hardware that you're getting in that collection would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Just a Roland Jupiter 8 these days goes for more than $20,000. But just the vintage and classic synths wouldn't give Arturia the edge. What really changes things now is Pigments 6. There are only a handful of what I would call super synths out there, and I think Arturia has taken the lead with Pigments 6 in my opinion. This won't be a full tutorial on Pigments or Pigments 6 new features, but it will describe what makes this a super synth. First of all, you've got multiple engines. So in engine number 1, you've got 3 oscillators potentially and different types of synthesis method. So it's set to analog right now, but it could be a wavetable, a sample, harmonic, or modal. And the modal piece is new. In 6, that's really a physical modeling type capability. Depending on what method you choose, you get a lot of options. For example, here in wavetable, you've got hundreds of wavetables to choose from. These are just the FM wavetables. You've got analog wavetables, filtered wavetables. So a lot to choose from. And that all changes depending on what synthesis method. You can also use samples as your sound source. And from those samples, you can extract grains for granular synthesis. I mentioned harmonic and the new modal capabilities. And modal is kind of split into two. You've got string and beam. Now, if you don't know anything about modal, it's really physical modeling driven by variations on how a string or a piece of glass or a piece of metal is hit by another object and creates a sound. So you've got all those synthesis methods in Engine 1, then you've got them again in Engine 2, and then you've got a utility engine that can create two types of noise and an extra oscillator. So this is basically a bunch of different synths all combined into one. Down below here you've got modulation methods, and they're organized and color-coded depending on what you modify. These are keyboard-driven modulation. There's envelopes, LFOs, 3 of them, functions, some random capabilities, and some further combinations. So it's got every type of modulation that we've known. There's 2 main filters. You've got filter routing, panning, send levels. You can dive into the details on how to play each one of those synth methods. There's an effects page that has a bunch of built-in effects with presets, a bunch of different reverb presets. In addition to reverb, you've got delay and chorus and shimmer and distortion. Really everything you could possibly need. And it has a built-in sequencer. So let's just hear some of the presets. There's 2 ways you can choose presets. There's a quick menu up at the top where you can choose all, see all the presets, long list, bass, brass, wind, drums, electric piano, keys, leads, organ, pads, piano, sequencer. This is kind of the quick way to find presets. Then there's a full browser capability where you can search for the presets based on a keyword, or you can filter by type, style, and bank. So what you're seeing right here, because I've clicked on liked, is all the presets that I've flagged as ones that I like. But if I turn that off, go into explore, you're going to see Pigments has a total of 1,718 presets, and you can add to that preset list with some free downloads from the Arturia website. Here's the 5th synth sweep. Here's the wooden oracle. I'm letting you hear that one because it takes advantage of the modal engine. Here's something called howler bass. This one combines an analog source with the 3 oscillators, and on Engine 2 a sample. This one's called Acoustic Drops. Long Forgotten Tomorrows is made up of a wavetable and a sample. Here's an example of a sequenced sound. Take a look at the sequencer, it'll give you some idea of what's going on. We just dip down to the sequencer group, see what else we can find in there. Everything you're hearing there is me just holding down one note. So if you're in the market for expanding your sounds, and you're going to do that through synthesis and emulations of classic and vintage keyboards, I think this is the best way to go. You really don't need much else. You've got all the classics covered in the V Collection X, and you've got all the modern capabilities covered by Pigments 6. And having played a lot with all the competing synths that are out there, I think it's a good idea to invest your time and learn one of them extremely well. What's your opinion on Arturia? Are they the best? I want to hear your opinions in the comments. And if you found this video useful, click on the like button. Consider subscribing to the channel and clicking on the notification bell. Hey, thanks for watching.